Wednesday night edition of the Buddy Martin Show. Tonight on the program, we're going to talk about the pursuit of Boogie, among other things. If you've been following Boogie Flan, he's dropped out of the NBA, and he's now going back to play college ball. Gators hoping they can maybe make a connection there. We'll tell you more about that in a minute. On the show tonight, we've got Kevin Brockway from the Gainesville Sun. Allie P. Wilbur is taking advantage of some information she's got on recruiting. I don't know where we stand, but I know it can't be good when you've only got one recruit in 2026. We'll talk about that. It might be much to do about nothing. Allie always brings it. And then Scott Carter will give us the information on the diamond shining so brightly. The Gators this weekend got a chance in postseason to make some noise in softball and baseball. All that going on, lots more to talk about. Come join us and tell us all about what you're thinking. We love to get your take right here on the Buddy Martin Show, or Kevin Brockway's next.
Yes, it's time again for Buddy Martin. Call him up and tell him what you're thinking. But be kind, because he's doing the best he can.
Better, stronger, faster.
Mama says that alligators are ornery because they got all them teeth but no toothbrush.
Hey, what if the voice calls while you're gone?
Take a message.
Bye.
You ready, champ?
I'm ready for this my whole life.
I'm incapable of small talk. But that's why you love me, right?
Kind of intimidating to be in the presence of so many great athletes.
Good evening and welcome. Florida moving closer to another national championship. We'll tell you all about that different sport, but they do advance, and they're going to be have a chance to have a crack at it. Also, good story today on Coach Todd Golden throwing out the first pitch for the Chicago Cubs at Wrigley Field. And was there a side visit to a guy named Boogie? That's the question. Hopefully, our next guest, Kevin Brockway, can address that and tell us. Apparently, Boogie Flan has got serious considerations. I learned today his agent is Mike Miller. Yes, the Mike Miller, former Gator basketball player. So wouldn't that be something? Also, A.J. Brown's officially signed with the Gators. And I've got some new over-under totals for you from the Gambling Gods. I'm kind of surprised. You may be surprised where Florida is. You might want to take out some money and make a little wager on this. All coming your way tonight right here on the Buddy Martin Show. Come and join us. It's going to be fun. It's always enlightening. And I want to say a quick shout out to my friends at the Panhandle Gator Club. Last night I got a chance to meet with them at their board meeting. Fascinating bunch of guys are doing some great stuff here in the Panhandle, and I'll be doing some things with them. So they're good people. And as a matter of fact, the president is a former Gainesville High School football player under Jim Knoblack. So we'll talk about that a little later. We'll have a guest on Thursday night. Right now it's time to go out to the orange and blue cam and see if we can find there.
Buddy, did you know that I lived in Fort Walton Beach for a year in 1999?
I did not know that.
The Northwest Florida Daily News. It's called the Playground Daily News.
Yeah, I remember, yeah.
Destin Fishing Rodeo and lots of great high school football there. Niceville, Choctaw, Crestview.
Yeah,
covered a lot of games out there.
Who was a sports editor then?
Well, Arnold Feliciano hired me, and then he had hired me in Gainesville, but he left the day that I got there, and then it was kind of a hodgepodge of different people.
Was Ralph Broughton there then, or was he earlier?
Ralph was, I think he was a little bit either earlier or later, and there was a guy. Terry Ballard was there for a little bit.
Yeah.
And he worked up in Opelika also. He was a former Auburn guy. But it was fun. Yeah, beautiful beaches. Great weather. Didn't stay there long though. I ended up going to Naples and then ended up coming up to Gainesville.
Yeah, I've done that Naples thing, as you know. I was down there in Port Charlotte for many years, and still see a lot of my friends there. Well, anyway, good stuff, and I think we these guys are really some great Gators. It's going to be fun to bring them in and have them on show once in a while, and they'll participate. And there's 4 Gator clubs. I'm just learning the landscape from Pensacola over to Tallahassee, and this is the one that's in Panama City, and they are very active, and they've been doing it for a long time. And some good guys and good women, and had a great time last night with them, and we'll be talking to them. Meanwhile, let's talk about you.
Yeah.
What's happening with the Boogie Woogie Man? Okay.
Well, it's interesting because, Todd Golden is in Chicago, and, he's obviously there to support his own guys for the, NBA draft combine. Walter Clayton, Alex Condon, obviously, Will Richard, Elijah Martin, Ruben Chiniello, they're all there in various either G League or, actual combine events. Todd threw out the first pitch of the Cubs game on Tuesday, which just happened to be, and Todd's a lifelong Cubs fan, by the way. His dad used to take him to Cubs games in Peoria all the time, so he's a big Cubs fan. But it happened to also be the day that Boogie Fland withdrew from the NBA draft, and there's been a lot of smoke about Todd even possibly meeting Boogie before that. And I don't know for sure if they met on Tuesday, but I do know there's mutual interest on both sides from a source within the program. So, there's a possibility this could get done now. Look, and Mike Miller's the agent, as you mentioned before. He could probably sell him on what it means to be a Gator.
Yeah.
I think the concern with a guy like Fland is, he's a 5-star recruit, big name, played under John Calipari last year, had a thumb issue, missed a lot of the year. What happens if a blue blood comes in? What happens if North Carolina and Hubert Davis, Hubert Davis is desperate to keep his job? What happens if a program like that comes into play and ups the ante price?
Yeah,
and that's going to be
money's a big thing.
And that's going to be the thing is can Mike Miller basically tell Boogie Fland on, hey, look, if Florida ends up offering less money here, it can still be beneficial for you to go to Florida because of what Florida has proven it can develop for you at the next level. And I think that's what Todd's selling point has to be, much the way it was Billy Donovan's selling point, many years ago when money was flowing under the table. I mean, it was the same concept. It's like, look, I'm going to get you the NBA. But Todd has a chance to have, 1 first-round draft pick and maybe 2 if Alex Condon stays in. Alex Condon also said today at the Combine, apparently that he's going to be, he's looking for somewhere in the 20 to 35 range. But if he doesn't have an assurance there, then he's going to come back to Florida. And he has, obviously until May 28th to decide there.
Yeah, I saw that story, and they're trying to decide exactly where he might fall. I did see his statement. He said he was going to continue to pursue it and see, like you said, he had a projection in there someplace. Of course, we're all hoping he'll come back to Florida, especially if he gets Boogie Fland and that team. They're looking at a potential run again for the title if they does. But it's hard to know what exactly others are offering, and how that's going to go. And speaking of which, I know you don't follow recruiting with a vengeance, but you follow it like I do. Anything to be made of that Florida's only got one 2026 commit
for football?
Yeah.
Is that the quarterback? Is he still the one that's committed? Yeah.
4-star.
And I watched him in the Under Armour game. He's got some room to grow. Obviously, still takes a few sacks here and there. I wouldn't be too alarmed because last year at this time, there was some concern and Florida closed strong. Now you've got to flip some guys. Obviously, that's what Billy Napier did. But, the 7th ranked recruiting class in the country, when things looked dire at the end of last year, at this time last year, and you wind up with the 7th ranked recruiting class, these are 17, 18-year-old kids. They can change their minds. I do think that, June, once the camps revved up, I think you'll see a few commitments there, June, July, August, over the summer. That's when they tend to pour in. And, I think there's obviously got to be some positive momentum with the 4-game winning streak. Billy's kind of off the hot seat now, so he can kind of sell in the summer months, hey, look, my staff, we're going to be here for a while, and we've had a little bit of success here. But I think you got to build off it for sure. going into next year. And I do think that there's a lot that more that they probably have to sell now. And there's still some uncertainty, obviously with the House NCAA settlement, versus what Florida Victorious is doing. And I think that when that gets settled too, I think that will result in more commitments flowing in.
I think the thing is, but Will Griffin's the quarterback, and he may or may not be the guy who's a 4-star OC. We have a little bit of time on that because DJ Lively is going to be here a couple of years, hopefully, unless something happens to him.
Yep.
I don't see any sign that it will. He seems committed. And also, the fact that they've had 3 decommits in 2026. Now, one of them is already committed to 5 different schools. So,
yeah, exactly.
So that's that. There's that, you know. But and I don't get too concerned about it. I think somebody made a good point about the fact that Billy's done a great job of developing players, and now's the time he needs to go in and get those big, the big guys, and the heavy, the big defensive, offensive linemen they need, etc. I hear that's one of the things.
I think though, you take a look at this, because I did a depth chart this week.
Yeah.
And, you're looking at, guys like Fletcher Westfall, right? Marcus Mescal. Right. I think he's starting to get some layers there in the offensive line in terms of the depth.
Right.
And the defensive front, I mean, I would say the tackles are a little bit thin there in the tackle position. And obviously losing DeAndre Robinson, the transfer portal hurt. That would probably be an area where you'd really like to see some more interior defensive linemen. But those guys, as you know, don't grow on trees. They can be very hard to get. And when you're recruiting against Georgia, LSU, Alabama, Auburn, it's not easy. And there is a lot of money to be throwing around, and it's over the table now, buddy, not under the table. So,
yeah, exactly. I think the other thing is reason it's coming to the fore recruiting, and we're always talking about it. There's so much to keep up between the portal and the recruiting, etc. And who's going to what when. Now we got a big recruiting weekend coming up. Supposedly this is a huge weekend. And then Miami pulls off the coup. They get the 5-star offensive tackle, Jackson Cantwell, and he's the number 1 pick of all the players in the country. That's a big get for Miami, who appeared to be kind of dead in the water. And now they're back in the hunt there. And Cantwell's 6'7", 300 pounds, number 1 player in both on 0-3 and rivals. He plays for Nixa, Missouri High School. He earned Gatorade Player of the Year honors in December. And there's a lot of people raising their eyebrows because he was headed for Georgia. And Miami got him flipped around. Now he's going to be a Miami Hurricane. What does this do to the pressure in Florida and recruiting?
Yeah, well, I would probably feel pretty good that he didn't go to Georgia, right? Because you're not going to be facing Miami every year. You're going to be facing Georgia every year.
True.
You only got him one more time. Mm-hmm. And, Alex Mirabal, apparently down there, and Mario Cristobal, they believe in the offensive line. They believe in the development. But, certainly Billy has a lot to sell, too, with Rob Sale and their 2 offensive line system and so forth. And listen, buddy, there is, there's a development piece, too, in this thing. You've got the transfer portal out there. You've got a lot of different avenues now as far as building talent is concerned and accumulating talent. So, while Cantwell, I mean, certainly it's a nice coup for Miami. And signing day is a few months away. So you never know what could happen between now and
I'm confused. I'm lost. There's so many days.
Yes. So December, early signing day in December. So look, you've got, you could say a kid is committed, but you still have 5 or 6 months to get to the finish line on that.
Right.
And we've even look at the case of Dallas Wilson too, even beyond signing day, right? They can get out of their financial agreements also. So there's a lot that can happen between now and December, which is why I know it's nice. It's cottage industry. People like to talk about it, but there's a lot that can go on between now and December. These classes change. They do. I mean, we said particularly not so much in the basketball realm, but in the football realm, we see it change quite a bit.
I get the Wilsons mixed up, but I know Trey's brother was the one prior. There was a great video of one of the Wilsons. I think it might have been Trey. I'm not sure. Of him with no shirt on, working out. He was saying, looks like Percy Harvin. He is built and jacked, and he's fast and great moves. Did you see that video?
I have not seen it, but I will tell you this, buddy. I think it's a big year for him. Obviously, coming off the hip surgery,
Yeah.
he showed that playmaking potential as a true freshman.
Mhm.
You'd like to see it there. I'll be curious to see, if they have him return punts too, if they try different things with him.
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
I think the thing with Trey is he's still, 5'10", maybe he gets a little bit stronger so he can, run the football, maybe be a little more effective on those jet sweeps, which he wasn't last year. I thought he was a little small for that in the SEC to be able to pull that off, but maybe, a year stronger. He could break a tackle or two on those kind of plays. And we know he has the speed, and it's a matter of, being creative,
Right.
designing the play, calling the play at the right time that gets him into open space and get the ball in his hands. And that's going to be, again, and that goes back to the play calling piece. Billy Napier, certainly Russ Callaway, and what they designed as an offense for him to make him a weapon. But his health is going to be important too. Certainly, the hip injury, I think, really kind of slowed him both physically and mentally trying to get over that last year. You saw that.
Well, the other side of that is you're hearing a lot of this lately. We've talked about a lot of this program. I'm sure you've talked about this lineup of receivers. I don't think the national media quite knows how good they are, although some do. There's some guys who get it and understand. And Florida's been picked high in some preseason polls because of it. There's certain people whose name whose word I take for it that were better. But Lagway's will be throwing to guys like Dallas Wilson, Eugene Wilson, the soccer ball. Oh, no, that's a different one. Khalil Jackson, Aiden Mizell, Tank Hawkins, who we really haven't heard that much from yet, Burnell Brown, who could be a stud, and J. Michael Sturdivant. I mean, this is one of the top recruiting. This is one of the top receiving rooms in the country.
Yeah.
If Lagway is able and well, and then you throw in the mix of the tight ends. They got some really good tight ends. Billy believes in that tight end a lot. And then, of course, the running backs Jaden Bowles set for a fantastic year. This team is really, I'm looking at them now trending more toward 9.5 to 10 wins. And if everything goes normal. Now, we know we got the schedule. We'll go over it 100 times this year before the season starts. And we'll get excited about it. There are some downs. There's some tough patches in there, but there were tough patches last year. Even with some of those, the projections are coming out pretty strong for the Gators. And I know that this is not just us, local guys. These are national guys, too, starting to wake up and say, hey, they're for real. Have you been hearing that?
Yeah, I see this comment. The national media hates the Gators. He must not know Josh Pate. I don't know if you consider Josh Pate a national guy, but he's one of Florida's biggest cheerleaders. I think that there's
picked him ninth in the country.
Yeah. I think there are some that are very high on him. I think there are others that are still taking a little bit of a wait and see approach. But I've been doing, I just did the Lindy's preview. I just, when you analyze this team, when you look at the depth and you talk about, Billy Napier said after spring game, look, this is the deepest, fastest receiving room that I've had since I've been here. And you have a quarterback like DJ Lagway, who obviously you got to keep healthy, and we got to see, about the shoulder and how it comes around. But if that all falls into place, buddy, I tend to agree with you. I think that there's a chance for another jump here, to maybe 9 or 10 wins, and then that puts you in CFP contention. And you, like I said, you have to compare it to the rest of the league too. And listen, and I know I said this last week, but no Nico Imavalia at Tennessee, no Jackson Dart at Ole Miss, no Connor Beck at Georgia, although you will see him at Miami. But like league wise concerned, they had 4 SEC wins last year. I mean, there's a chance to get 5 or 6 SEC wins this year.
It is looking very promising, and there's no question about that. We're going to go through this list in a minute. Alec will be joining us. If you can stick around, we're going to kind of go through these new numbers of the over-under wins. I mean, I'm not a gambling man, but even I might take a Bob Booker on this one. We just hear some of these numbers that are coming out. By the way,
I saw one of them,
Yeah, the team that's I was talking about competing for a possible national championship, the golf team. They won 28 under advanced to their fifth straight national championship contention. So we'll see how they do. But they won the regional, so that's a good thing. We got
I
regional.
saw that.
We got softball. We got baseball. We got a lot of stuff going on right now in sports, and
Yep.
it's a lot of fun.
Lacrosse is in the Elite Eight also.
Yeah.
They got a Duke tomorrow, so yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Let me take just a moment here and tell folks about our sponsors. I want to pay for this, and of course, mainly being let's talk about our friends at Meldon Law. Meldon Law Monday. I was talking to friends of mine today, yesterday at the Gator Club here in the Panhandle Gator Club. We're talking about Meldon Law, and they said, "Yeah, we know all about Meldon Law. We heard enough about him. He rings our bell. We get even up here. They've heard of Jeffrey Meldon and Meldon Law and the things that they do because they do advertise a lot. They're supportive of the university and the players and the coaches, and nobody was happier than Jeffrey Meldon, his friend Todd Golden. They were close buddies, and he suffered through the time when Todd looked like Todd may have a legal problem, and he couldn't say anything about it. But then he was go meet him. He went out there and spent some time with Todd. He was at all the games. Jeffrey went to Texas and California, and of course he was a happy Gator to see when they won. So he's a Gator through and through. Has been since he's been here. Came here from Ohio years ago. And he, of course, has quite a law firm. If you haven't know about it, if you don't know about it, a lot of people do, and I'm one of them who uses them for certain things. And if you want to review your case or just check it out, call Meldon Law. Go by and see them in 4 locations to serve you: Ocala, Gainesville, Williston, Lake City. Meldon Law, they won't back down. I think we've got Miss Gatorbait right here. Let's see. I think it's here. It's clear. Look who's here.
Hello. How are you?
Wow.
What's going on? I'm living that Mayvember life right now with the last 2 weeks of school where it's just a marathon, but I'm good.
Yeah.
How are you guys?
Good. I wanted to tell you how much I enjoyed your podcast, Blake Alderman, and I don't get into recruiting very much because it's just beyond my capabilities to keep up. Yeah. But I think I heard him say that not to worry too much about the lack of signees or commits for 2026. He felt the consensus was Florida would rally on this and get it done. And he was kind of upbeat. Can you review what you said in your podcast with him?
Yeah. So, I mean, truly, Florida has one commitment in the class of 2026 right now, and that's Will Griffith, quarterback from Jesuit High School here in Tampa. We've had 3 decommitments in the last couple of weeks. And truly, though, what Blake said is that in the NIL era, nothing that comes out of a kid's mouth right now means a whole lot. And when the official visits start, which will be the end of this month and into June, when they really get on campus and get to see what Florida has to offer and NIL numbers start being thrown around and things like that, that he does expect will get some commitments then. And even then, though, when those kids commit, you really can't trust it until the ink dries on the paper because everybody's chasing the next big thing, right? But the interesting thing that he said that I think is important for Gator fans is that he has not talked to a recruit who has said they're waiting because they want to see how Florida is going to do. Mm-hmm. He said that he feels like they all seem pretty confident that Florida is going to do well and that that's not what they're waiting on. They're basically want to take all their visits, want to see what the NIL offers are, but it's not that they're in a wait and see mode because they're not sure what Napier's going to do, which that was the case last year. So I think that that's, that should be really reassuring to Gator fans.
Yeah, I think it's certainly a factor. We're going to jump into some numbers here. Kevin's agreed to stick around for a minute, and you maybe have seen these already, the new over-under numbers on Gators, which I think are fascinating because there's trending up. But we just were talking about Josh Pate's picks, and by the way, he has Florida 9th in the country. And so let's get to this list here. Let me take this latest. Here's one here. This is the 2025 SEC college football win totals just in the SEC. This is one projection. I wish I knew who it was. I've forgotten. But here it is right here. The number 1 teams are Georgia, Alabama, Texas. Okay, that's no surprise, all right? They're all at 9.5, okay? That's about right. LSU and Ole Miss and is it Tennessee? I can't see it. Or 8.5. Yeah, all 8.5. All right. I'm not getting to Florida yet. Auburn, Missouri, and South Carolina and Texas A&M are 7.5. Now get this: Florida is 6.5.
Mm-hmm.
I would get me some money on that deal. I'm pretty sure they're going to win more than 6.5. If you want to I'm not a gambler. I'm not suggesting you do, but that's like a low hanging fruit. Also, you get OU in there. You get Arkansas at 5.5, Kentucky 4.5, Vanderbilt at 4.5, and Mississippi State at 3.5.
That's a good question, buddy. Does that include the bowl games or no, or the college football playoff?
I don't know. I think it's this season, I believe, but I'm not sure.
I saw one that had 7.5 too, and I'm like, no, they're definitely. I could definitely see, especially if you're including the bowl game.
Right.
I could see definitely over 7.5 as well.
I think these are not with the bowl games. I'm not sure. But anyway, let's go.
I think they're regular season numbers.
Because 9 wins might get you in the playoff.
Yeah.
So you go into a bowl game. All right, here's one from Circa Sports. You guys heard of Circa Sports? I don't know.
Yeah, that's the one I saw at Circa Sports today. Okay. That's the one that is the 7.5, right?
Let's run through these. Alabama, Georgia, Texas, 9.5, kind of the same. LSU, Ole Miss, Tennessee, 8.5. Auburn, Texas A&M, 8. Florida, 7.5. Along with Missouri and South Carolina. Then Oklahoma, Arkansas, Vanderbilt. What does this tell you guys? Anything?
Well, the interesting that Missouri was different on both of those. The first one, when you said Missouri, I think 8.5, that tracked for me based solely on their schedule. Like we talked last summer about how Missouri could probably sleepwalk to 10 wins because their schedule was set up for that way. So I do kind of wonder how much is just taking simply schedules into account. Florida's schedule is going to be tougher than several of the teams that they have with more wins above them. But, it's very interesting to see the difference between like where Vegas thinks Florida is going to be win total wise and then where experts are putting them in their preseason polls, because there's a disconnect there, right? Like you mentioned, Josh Payne has Florida at 9th. Yeah. There's lots of people that have Florida in their top 10, at the very least their top 20 in the preseason. But then also we've got Vegas telling us we're going to win 7.5. And that, I don't know, that there's a disconnect somewhere.
I think Vegas guys are smarter. There you go about where the money's going. But there's a lot of ignorance at the national level about things like this. Let's look at the basketball team last year, Kevin. They didn't quite get the Gators till the end. They didn't figure they were legit. They weren't gonna be a top city. They just didn't give them any respect all year long, and they had to earn it at the end. Finally, they did. They kept talking
about national guys. Okay, I didn't vote on the SEC poll for whatever reason, but the SEC poll had Florida 6 in the SEC in October. Yeah. And I thought that they were, and even our USA Today, but I voted on that, and I had Florida 3rd, I think, top 4 behind Alabama and Auburn. But so I was more bullish on the Gators than most, even going into the season, and they were 25. But I think the question mark was, would the defense come around? And it did, obviously, in spades. And Elijah Martin turned out to be that they needed there, and Ruben Chinyelu, for sure. So I think that worked out. Hey, I'm going to tell you this about as far as the, some of these win totals here in Georgia. I mean, did they watch, that for doing Georgia 9.5, did they watch Gunnar Stockton go 20 of 32, 234, 1 TD, 10 points against Notre Dame? Listen, Al Golden did a great job with that defense. I'm not denying that, and it got him an NFL job. But Ohio State, had their way with that same defense as well, Notre Dame. And for them to only score 10 points against Notre Dame, and for them to think that, Georgia's going to automatically win 9.5 games with Gunnar Stockton at quarterback, I think, versus DJ Lagway, who was 6-1 as a starter last year, I think and I know Georgia's got a lot of talent on both lines of scrimmage, but Florida does as well. So I'm just wondering, what they see.
You mentioned Georgia and Allie. We just automatically think Kirby's going to mail it in and get 10 wins. But is it going to last? Things do change. What do you think about Georgia Allie, and how high you think they should be ranked right now?
So I actually think that this is going to be a down year for Georgia on Georgia terms, right? Which doesn't necessarily, I'm not saying Georgia's going to only win 7 or 8 games, but I don't think that it's going to be the season we've come to expect from Georgia.
The dominance of,
Right. But I also believe that Kirby Smart is one of the best in college football. And so the down years won't last long. So I've been saying all along, like, this is the year for Florida to get them, because I do expect Kirby to have a great team in another year, right? Like, he's a phenomenal coach. But I expect this to be the worst Kirby team that we've seen in a long time, which, again, a terrible Kirby team is better than 90% of college football. So I'm not predicting them to have a losing season by any means, but I don't think Georgia is going to be in the national title conversation next year.
Interesting. I've learned one thing, guys, in all of my years. You better get the QB right. You got to get the QB right. You're not going to be able to do it.
Yes.
And I think that's one thing that's happened in Georgia. They just can't get the right guy in there. Obviously, the guy's gone to Miami. And I think Florida does have the guy.
Yeah.
And I think that's the key. So that's a big thing. And as you pointed out too, Kevin, the quarterbacks around the league aren't that good anymore. There's not that many great quarterbacks in the league. And so it's not nothing that your quarterback has to still get on the job training. Yeah. I think there's some teams like that. That's why I think Florida, if DJ is okay, big upgrade for the Gators if that happens.
And the other question mark too with Florida that Billy Napier tried to build is building that SEC line of scrimmage. And I think he's got it now, particularly on the offensive side. Again, I think the big question are, the inside, the tackles. Can Burrow be the guy at the nose guard? Can Caleb Banks obviously had a great year last year, but where's the depth there to shuttle in and shuttle out guys in the interior? That's probably the biggest question mark on both lines of scrimmage. But you got a lot of edge rushers too. I mean, who knows? Like LJ McCray, maybe this is the breakout year for him. You got Tyreek Sapp. You got these 2 freshmen apparently. Jaden Woods and Jalen Wiggins look great in the spring. Kofi Asari, the transfer from UMass. I mean, they've got people were concerned about losing Piper, but they've got plenty of edge rushers on this team that could potentially make an impact. And but I think the interior of the defensive line is going to be the big question mark going into the season.
Alec, listen to Kevin getting us all fired up here all of a sudden. Right? It's only
I know. I'm the person that always preaches, don't believe the hype.
Here he is.
Hype.
Give him the what they call the shakers. Give him let him shake. Give him the pom-poms. Let's go. I'm ready. Let's do some.
I still question the interior of the defensive line, but I think everything else.
Well, I mean,
but the linebackers look good. I mean,
Yes. I think linebacker is one of the most solid rooms Florida has. That's part of why we saw Shamar James enter the draft. I think he saw the writing on the wall, how deep that room is, and that there was a chance he was going to get less playing time this season than he did last. Like, linebacker is one of the rooms I trust the most.
The only thing, Devin Moore has to show that he can stay healthy at the corner position. Obviously, that's another, obviously question. And we have the Dijon Johnson situation, but Cormani McClain apparently has his head on straight, and he's had a good spring. So,
which what a cool story if he ends up having the fall season that some people are predicting that he has. What a great, like, these are the stories we root for in college football, right?
Yeah,
redemption.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you do, and I don't know. What about the safeties, guys?
I mean, Bryce Thornton showed me a lot last year, and Costello is a pretty short tackler. I don't know how they're going to deploy Caraway. I mean, are they going to use him at safety? Are they going to use him at corner? He could be like a Triquez Bridges guy. You could play him a little bit of both. And Drake Stubbs, I'm telling you, as a strong safety, he can whack people. He can make plays. He had an interception in the spring game. So I think that there's Lagonza Hayward. I think there's some, young depth there, but good depth. And I think they'll be okay there as well.
Triquez Bridges was the guy that I started to really like at the end of the year. I mean, gosh, he's so big and he's quick. He's a good cover guy. He can tackle. How refreshing is it to see safeties who can tackle, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I think he was. So what does it look like now, the starting safeties, Kevin?
Well, I think you still go with Thornton and you go with Castell. Castell's gotten stronger and he's a decent cover guy. I mean, he led the team in pass breakups. And then the star position, obviously, you got Sharif Denson, who showed some playmaking ability last year. And then Aaron Gates, I think the big question mark is his health, right? If he can come back from the knee, and he's another guy that can, play up there at the start too. So I think they're okay in the secondary. I think they're going to be good there. And I think, they showed a lot of growth. Will Harris, obviously, in terms of the takeaways and the turnovers they forced last year, there was a marked improvement compared to the year before. You have another new secondary coach in Darren Wilson, but he's got a little familiarity, right, with working with Billy as an analyst. So we'll see if they can, take another step forward in terms of the playmaking ability. I think that was the big issue a couple of years ago with Corey Raymond, is they just weren't, playing the ball well and coming up with enough of those plays, interceptions that they got last year.
You got to be a playmaker back here. You got to make plays,
Yeah.
And you just can't run up and make a tackle after you gain 20 yards. The word got out about Florida's real low over-under for gambling, and Scott Carter couldn't resist. He had to come in here because he knows that 6.5 is way too low for these Florida Gators. Good evening to you, Scott.
Hey, guys. I was having some technical difficulties, which is about the norm for me. So
we know about those. We know all about those. If you live on this place, you do. Well, Scott, it's good to have you, and thanks for hanging around. If you can hang, guys, for a second, I want to talk a little about diamonds, the brilliance of diamonds. And there's since we sit here, Florida's getting ready to host in baseball and in softball. There's been a good deal of excitement about both those teams recently. And Allie, which of these two teams has you the most excited? The baseball team is coming back from the living dead. Now it had an incredible once they won 5 straight series, and the unbelievable job they did of going to Austin, and now they're starting to find some pitching. Or the softball team, who had an early exit, but still they've got the players, including great Falby. I think today was nominated for Player of the Year. What do you think, Allie?
Honestly, both of those teams excite me, but for kind of totally different reasons. We sat here and talked about baseball probably 6 weeks ago, and essentially saying like Florida was in do or die, and people were writing them off, right? Like left for dead. And the turnaround is pretty remarkable. And I feel like Florida just is always so good in May and into June. Like that baseball is generally clicking on full cylinders at that point. But the beginning of the season was just so baffling to all of us. I think we thought we were going to have more pitching than we ended up having. And Florida didn't live up to the initial hype, but the glow up is real.
Kevin, I know you follow all Gator sports, but there are special stories. The Fall Beach story, the last home appearance, or the chanting her name, and so funny. She didn't even acknowledge it. Even her coach said, well, said, at least she could wave, or something. But she's such a delightful athlete to follow and a good player. That gets my attention, Kevin. Does it get yours?
Yeah. And, softball, it's going to be interesting this weekend because, it seemed like that loss in the SEC tournament didn't really hurt them in terms of, the 3 national seed, right, buddy?
Right.
And I think they got Georgia Tech, they got Florida Atlantic, and Mercer, and they opened with Mercer on Friday. And it looks like another chance, to get to Oklahoma City. And they've really, I think the pitching is and defense is a little bit of concern, but they can hit up and down the order, fairly well this year. And they're going to be they'll be in the mix, I think, these next 2 weekends. And, having those, 2 games at home, they've played pretty well at home all season long. Obviously taking 2 or 3 from Oklahoma, 2 or 3 from Texas A&M. They're going to be, in a good position to get back to the Women's College World Series.
Scott, when they write the history on Kevin O'Sullivan, I mean, if you look at his body of work, it's incredible. And this season might be the most incredible one to start out 1-11. I mean, give me a shot. I mean, there's no way, right? You scrap that one and say, forget about playing for next year. He refused to do that. What an amazing comeback by him.
Yeah, he kept just pushing the buttons and keeping the guys motivated and trying to find the solutions. I mean, they lost some really good players to injuries. And, I thought last year it was an unexpected run to the postseason, obviously. Ended up in Omaha. I mean, I think he may have done a better job this year, and the record is actually a lot better this year. But when you start out 1-11 in your conference, I don't care what you're playing, you can easily lose your team and lose confidence, and a lot of things can go wrong there. And to keep it together and do what they've done, I think you could argue that he might be SEC Coach of the Year this year, just from turning around and getting to the postseason. I don't think there's any doubt they're in the postseason now after what they did at Texas. Now it's a matter of if they sweep this weekend. It's hard to do, obviously, in the SEC. But if they do, I think you'll hear some really strong talk about them maybe hosting. And who would have ever thought that? Certainly not me. So it's certainly one of his better jobs.
For sure. Now, guys, did you watch the baseball series in Austin this past week? I've watched more baseball the last 2 weekends than I watched. I don't know when. Every minute I could watch when I could get it, because sometimes it wasn't known because of the rain delays. And I go to my radio and I go to my internet and I'd get the radio part, listen to the broadcast. I loved it. I loved listening to the radio. It was great.
But it reminded me of the St. Louis Cardinals with that artificial turf that they have there. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's interesting. But Florida played it well. And I thought that, we had Nick Belmonte on our podcast earlier today. And, really, he talked about the pitching, obviously settling down, Clemente getting the role as a closer, Liam Peterson and Aiden King emerging. And King was terrific on Sunday. But also the bottom of the lineup and how they're producing also. Yeah. Guys like Hayden Yost, guys like Nadeau, Ashton Wilson when he's in the game, and how this is a much longer lineup, and it lengthens the lineup, and it turns over, and it helps. And I believe that, the bottom three in the lineup the last 5 weekends has been over 400 on base percentage, over 300 batting average. So that has really kind of spurred this group on, as well as the fact that they're getting production 1 through 9, and they're winning different ways. They took 2 or 3 from Texas, and they pitched well, but only 1 home run in the 3 games too. They found other ways to score other than the long ball. Yeah. I think the wind was blowing in all weekend there too, so it's kind of crazy shifting winds. Yeah.
And if I said to you if they were out there, they're going to play the number 1 team. Okay, number 1. They're going to hit 1 home run, and they have to start a freshman pitcher in the last game of the series. What would you have thought the odds would be, Allie, of them winning? I mean, what a great performance they got out of their freshman pitcher for 7 innings.
Yeah, I mean, not large. I don't know what the Vegas odds were at the start of that, but not high in Florida's favor, I'm sure.
Yeah, I don't know if they said in Scotland yet that they went into Austin against the number 1 team. They never lose a series out there, and they surely should have won all 3 games. If you don't have the rain delay and they have to lose their starter in Peterson, then they're probably going to win that game. They sweep Texas, the number 1 team in the nation, and this is a 1-11 start team. It's a phenomenal story, Scott.
Yeah, it is. I think it's like you said, it's a unique story around this baseball team because usually they're a front runner in the league, or certainly near the top of the national standings, and this year they haven't been. And I like last year. I enjoy when these teams do come out of nowhere because it doesn't happen very often with the Gators in any sport. So you see it now back-to-back years of baseball. It just goes back to what we were talking about earlier. I mean, Kevin O'Sullivan, he's one of the best in the business. He could easily fit into a major league dugout and manage a team really well if that was something he wanted to do. I mean, I've always been impressed by just the way he manages the team. He very rarely makes decisions that you're sitting there, I wonder what he's doing that for. I mean, I've been around the game. It's my favorite game. And I don't really, he's just in line. He really knows what he's doing. So it shows. But, you also got to give credit to these guys because, again, I thought Aiden King, what he did on Sunday, that's Sully said it himself. That's probably as good of a start that he's ever had from a true freshman. And I would agree with that. You look back over the years, he's had some really good freshman pitchers. I remember going back to Karsten Whitson and Hudson Randall, those guys, obviously Alex Faedo and Logan Shore. Aiden King is certainly fitting right in there with what he's doing.
Brady Singer, too, is another guy that comes to mind.
Brady Singer. So he's had some really good ones, and Aiden King just looks like one in that history.
He didn't back down. He kept hitting his own, and I was so impressed with him. I remembered a million years ago when I pitched baseball in Florida, and the first start I had standing out on the mound, how my hand was shaking. I'm thinking, just get me a ball over the plate, please. And how nervous you are as a freshman. Nobody knows you. You're out there thinking, who's this guy?
I remember watching that on ESPN Plus. I actually remember that game, buddy.
Yeah, right. I don't think they had ESPN when I pitched. But anyway, it's just I was so impressed. I've tried this theory out, and I've kind of got hooted down on it. I don't know. I just still think there's something. You guys have heard me say this. You're probably sick and tired of hearing it. I know that that others are, and I've done it on several shows. But there is something about the rising tide raises all ships. And Allie, you heard me say it 1,000 times. I don't get a lot of support in that theory. Spurrier didn't buy into it, and whatever. But I say, when you keep the fan base buzzing and excited, and today when athletes eat together a lot, when one team wins, it could be maybe not contagious, but it does set a certain standard. And if you look at it now tell me if I'm crazy, I know, but think about this. If you go back and look at last year, you look at when they started winning football games in November, right? 1-4 in a row. If you track the basketball teams record through then, right? What they have done. And then when the baseball team started winning, and after that, they began to win. And those things coincided somehow. And now suddenly we have the baseball, softball, etc. There's something going on. Is there something in the water or not? Am I crazy?
I think that football and basketball have the ability to raise all tides. I think that the buzz that happens on campus from those two sports specifically winning is palpable. But I almost feel like it kind of takes away from baseball and softball a little bit to, credited it all to basketball. I feel like this is what we're seeing with baseball and softball every year at this time of the year. I do think it's interesting that baseball started winning basically the day after Florida won the basketball national title, and they've had very few losses since then. And it was like oh shoot, kind of moment. And they did turn things around, but we are used to baseball being in a pretty darn good position come mid-May. I think that's what we have come to expect out of Sully. Same thing from Tim Walton and softball. They are winners, but I do think a winning mentality is contagious.
I pointed that out on my podcast, Allie. It's funny. I mentioned that, when I was talking to Nick about, almost how basketball success kind of overshadowed that 111 start a little bit, in Gator Nation, because they were so euphoric about basketball and March Madness.
Let that slide a little bit.
Although the diehards, that were in Conner Family Ballpark were probably pretty frustrated. Scott probably saw that. But yeah, like you said, the moment it stopped, basketball season ended, you saw that rising tide. I will say the one instance where it probably didn't work, football and basketball, based on my history, was that 2010 to 2014 where you had Muschamp. But Muschamp had the good year in 2012. But kind of those Muschamp McElwain years where Billy had basketball back on the ascension, it didn't carry over quite to football in that. And Billy went to his last Final Four in 2014, and baseball under Kevin O'Sullivan, 14 and 15, they were in the College World Series too. So basketball and baseball were kind of riding high last decade, but maybe not so much football.
Well, you gotta have the right coaches. I mean, that's the thing. You can't bring anybody off the street and say I was never a big fan of Muschamp's or of McElwain's. I thought Muschamp should have been a better hire than that. He was coaching and waiting at Texas for Mac Brown, the most desirable assistant out there when Florida got him. Well, okay, we'll see. But you have to have the right coaches in place. The question, it feels like, and then we'll see about Billy. I think I'm more coming around to Billy more and more. Billy, now Todd, now Sullivan we already had. And we didn't got into track, and Mouse yet.
No one touches Mouse. He
really
reigns supreme forever and ever.
It's hard to get there all the right coaches. You don't believe it? Look around the teams that disappeared off the face of the earth because they had the wrong guy.
Yeah.
And right now, Florida appears to have the right, even the women's basketball team, I think will eventually win. I think she'll win, I do believe. But right now, it feels like everything's in good stead. Not that they won't have some rough seasons, but I love the work ethic aspect of what Kevin O'Sullivan brings. Don't ever give up, as Jimmy V said. Don't give up. You're 1-11. Play it out. Let's see what you got. And like Spurrier always said, tell his team, keep playing. Something will happen. I don't know. It just feels good to me. Am I being kind of over optimistic, Kevin?
Yeah, I like I said, I think that Buddy, you bring up some good points there, and I believe that maybe this will carry over, and maybe we'll have the kind of fall that some Florida fans can remember.
Allie?
I would love to see it. And I would love for Billy Napier to be the guy. And I do feel like this is going to be one of those seasons where we're going to be able to see are we adaptable? What does it look like with all of his people in place? Do we have the system? We've talked for years at this point about a cement foundation versus a wood foundation. And now it's do or die time. I do think the resources are there. I think the recruiting is there. I think the support from the fan base is there. I mean, the amount of goodwill earned during the second half of the season last year is immeasurable. Most of us were writing him off after the Texas A&M game, and rightfully so. But the locker room clearly didn't, because you don't get turnarounds like that if you don't have 100% buy-in from your team. He clearly has that. So I'm really optimistic. I think we are on the most solid footing that we've been on in a really long time. I know you said you don't like Muschamp. I loved Muschamp. Muschamp was a player's coach. Those guys would go to war for him. And if Napier doesn't work out, I almost feel like I will put him like a Muschamp in my head, because those players love him and they want to play for him and they want to do well for him. And that's always the kind of feeling. My brother played for Muschamp, and that was, he'd still to this day run through a wall for him. But I am excited. I'm cautiously optimistic, because I never want to just go full on I'm 100% in, we're winning a title kind of thing. But I think that this team has all the tools to win 9 or 10 games this season, at least.
I agree. Let's talk to the guys in the building there. He's been around. He can tell. He can tell the feelings. I'm not saying we don't know. Look, those Miami game and the LSU game, the season, those are really key. We don't know what's going to happen. If they win those games, look out. Scott, what is the feeling there right now among people that you work around, you're with? What is it like?
Well, the optimism's obviously the highest it's been in a long time. I think, Ali said it, probably you go back maybe to me, 2019 is when I kind of have this similar thing. I really thought it was getting ready to take off with Mullen there in those first 2 years going into year 3. COVID disrupted everything, and then that season kind of went to crap, and then we all know what happened. And then now Billy, it's taken him a while to get to that point. But I think when you look at the program, the roster, all the behind-the-scenes pieces that he really wanted to put into place, they've got, I think, 15 players in Italy right now. Whoever thought they would actually have that kind of program at Florida, where they're really invested in that kind of stuff. Not many places are. So anyway, he's put it all together, and now I think the potential there is for what Florida fans want.
I'll clarify one thing. I didn't knock Muschamp as a coach. I just, because he had the record, I just simply like his style.
Yeah.
And part of that was he kind of completely just dissed Urban when he came at the door. He immediately changed it, made sure a statement in the first press conference. He didn't say never mind Urban's way, but he said it's Florida's way. Clearly making it a point.
I think it's really hard to be the person that follows the legend. Like, I can remember when Steve Spurrier announced he was going to the NFL. My dad said to me that day, he's like, "You never want to be the person that follows the legend. You want to be the person that follows the person that follows the legend." And so I can see why you would want to come in and immediately try and do things your way, because you are trying to create that separation. But it's neither here nor there. Clearly it didn't work out. I wished it would have. I really liked him as a person and as a coach, and that's where I pull the similarities were from Napier, is that these players, I don't know that we had a players coach like this since Muschamp. Players didn't feel the same way about McElwain. They didn't feel the same way about Mullen, but they did, really want to go to war for Muschamp. And I get those same vibes from these players for Napier. And I think it's a positive, right? I think it's huge that your locker room is 100% bought in on your head coach.
And, let's not forget with Will Muschamp, Charlie Weiss, and that debacle.
And who would have thought, that for sure, like when that was a hire, I was like, oh my gosh, that's so cool.
I hated that hire.
I know you did. You've told me that for years.
I told one of the coaches on the staff I hated it. And he said, what do you mean? He says, what do you mean? He's got the breed, he's smart, he's brilliant. I don't think he's that good of an offensive coordinator, in my opinion. That's just me. What limited knowledge I have. I hated him. And he took him backwards. Anyway, another time. All right, we got about a minute to go, and I guess we're going to say, I think, see if you agree or disagree. I thought Mullen was going to bring it. I thought he was the guy after the second year. Okay, he's got the Herman connection. He knows what it's like to win. What he did at Mississippi State was unbelievable. He could get them to number one. I thought, this is going to work out. I think Florida's back. Well, am I crazy, Scott, or do you think the same thing?
I definitely thought the same thing. I think he was 29-6 at one point.
Yeah.
And so when you win 29 of your first 35 games, you're thinking, wow, these guys are finally going to crack that college football playoff. And
exactly.
Yeah, it didn't happen. So now Florida has a chance. I think, they can finally be a real playoff contender this year. And how long has it been since we've said that?
Never. Yeah, really. Yeah.
In this new era.
I think Dan I think Dan always thought he could out scheme people, but in the end, recruiting matters too. You got to get the players, and I think that's what was ultimately his downfall, right?
Yeah.
I guess that's the wrap on now. But I mean, also he was the offensive genius. You remember we were going to bring points. Bring some offense. We're excited about it. It was working out good. The QB situation got straightened out. But you know what? I don't know, Kevin. You didn't think he was going to do it?
Well, I mean, I always thought the question was the defense and Todd Grantham and the defensive coordinators, much as it was for Muschamp with the offensive coordinators. It's about having a complete team, on both sides of the ball, which is what Billy's trying to build, and we'll see if he gets there. Yeah. But certainly, and some of that rests in the players. Look, he knew what to do with offensive talent too. I mean, you take a look at some guys like Kyle Pitts, Kadarius Toney, guys that developed under him. That went on to the NFL for sure. Kyle Trask, who's still in the league, obviously, and but it didn't translate on the defensive side of the ball, and then obviously it left some of the later recruiting classes kind of left Billy in a bind in terms of building his program as well.
I think.
Go ahead. We got 30 seconds. Go ahead.
I think there's some behind the scenes stuff also that kind of factored into all of this. I sat at a thing over the summer with Vernell Brown. This was multiple summers ago, back when Mullen was just, everything seemed to be going right. And at that moment, Vernell was kind of lamenting that basically that there was so much pay for play going on elsewhere that it was making it incredibly hard for them to land players. And this was like right before NIL became what it is. And he just saying like, it is so hard for us to compete when these guys walk in the door and say, hey, Georgia offered us XYZ. What are you offering us? Right. Knowing that it's not legal. And I know that there was a lot of frustration on their end about stuff like that. And I'm for one happy that Florida wasn't willing to cheat, but it does kind of make you fighting with one hand behind your back.
Right. Guys, great job. All of you. Thank you, Kevin. Thank you, Scott. And thank you, Allie. Be well. And I'll talk to you again next week. Thanks so much.
Hi, guys.
All right, guys. I wanted to wrap it up by telling you about our sponsor, our good friends at Titan MRI, now Titan MRI and Imaging. Joe Colorio, he started Highfield in 1997. Now he's back. Titan MRI and Imaging now has 3 locations to serve you. 2 in Gainesville with Park Avenue location and the Millennium Center. And also the one in Lake City serving all of Columbia County and also the folks in Valdosta. Titan MRI and Imaging offers the same great customer service. They now accept insurance, or you can go through their convenient self-pay option. Titan MRI Imaging offers MRIs, CAT scans, X-rays, and ultrasounds, easy scheduling, lots of options, including even. Check them out. plenty of locations to serve you. Titan MRI and Imaging. Thanks to our guest tonight. Thanks very much to our sponsors, of course, and thank you for listening. Going to be an interesting weekend with the Gators playing softball and baseball. Can they get it done? Well, we'll see. Back tomorrow night with more of the same. Hope you'll join us on the Buddy Martin Show. Good night, everybody.